The dawn of December 12, 1939, rose over the Karelian wilderness not with a sun, but with a gray, bruised sky that seemed to press down on the snow-laden pines. In the Finnish camp, the adrenaline of the sausage war had faded into a cold, bone-deep exhaustion. However, Colonel Paavo Talvela knew that momentum was a fragile thing. The Soviet 139th Rifle Division was shaken, but it remained a massive, well-equipped force holding the high ground and the vital bridges across the lakes. Talvela's intent was no longer just to stop the retreat. He intended to execute a double envelopment that would break the back of the Soviet advance. He ordered a general offensive to begin at 8 o'clock hours. It was an audacious gamble. Tactically, the Finns were violating every rule of traditional warfare by launching a frontal assault across open ice against a numerically superior foe. The terrain of Tolvajärvi was dominated by a series of long, narrow lakes, Tolvajärvi and Hirvasjärvi, connected by thin causeways and a central bridge. The Soviets had occupied the Tourist Hotel, a large, modern wooden building perched on a ridge overlooking the lake. From this vantage point, Soviet machine gunners had a panoramic view of the frozen white expanse. Any Finn attempting to cross would be a dark silhouette against a white canvas. Talvela divided his force into three main groups. To the north, a detachment under Major Malkamaki was sent through the trackless forest to outflank the Soviet right wing at Lake Hirvasjärvi. In the center, Lieutenant Colonel Eero Pajari and his Infantry Regiment 16 would strike directly across the causeways. This was the hammer, intended to shatter the Soviet corps. As the Finnish artillery, scant and precious, opened a brief 5-minute bombardment, Pajari's men moved out. These were the reservists from Tampere, men who just weeks ago were factory workers and shopkeepers. Now, draped in white bedsheets and summer capes for camouflage, they moved onto the ice of Lake Tolvajärvi. The silence of the morning was shattered by the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of Soviet Maxim machine guns. The ice offered no boulders for cover, no ditches for safety. The Finnish troops had to rely on speed and the psychological impact of their aggression. When the Soviet fire became too heavy, the Finns dropped into the snow, returning fire with their Suomi KP/-31 submachine guns. The Saha, as they called it, which proved devastating at close range. One Finnish soldier later recalled the sound of bullets, zipping and ricocheting, off the black ice, a sound like 1,000 cracking whips. Despite the casualties, the line did not break. The Finnish soldiers moved in short, violent bursts of speed, driven by the knowledge that to stop moving on the ice was to die. The fight for the Tourist Hotel became the focal point of the carnage. The building, once a symbol of Finnish wilderness tourism, was now a labyrinth of hallways and guest rooms filled with the smoke of cordite and the screams of close-quarters combat. Finnish soldiers scaled the ridge under a hail of grenades, hurling satchel charges through the windows to clear the ground floor. The Soviet defenders, belonging to the 718th Regiment, fought with a desperate tenacity. They knew there was no easy retreat. The bottlenecked roads behind them were already being harassed by Finnish ski patrols. Inside the hotel, the fighting was primitive. It was fought in the dark, in narrow corridors with knives, bayonets, and entrenching tools. By mid-afternoon, the Finns had cleared the building, turning the Soviets' own observation post against them. From the hotel windows, Finnish officers could finally see the Soviet lines beginning to waver and fray across the entire sector. To the north, the flanking maneuver through the deep snow was proving to be a logistical nightmare, but a tactical masterpiece. Men sank to their waists, hauling mortars on wooden sleds. But their arrival was the pivot point of the battle. When Malkamaki's men emerged from the tree-line near the Soviet rear, the 139th Division realized they were being squeezed into a madi, a Finnish term for a pile of wood gathered to be burned later. As Pajari's central force finally breached the eastern shore of the lake, the Soviet retreat turned into a rout. The narrow roads, the only arteries through the dense forest, became clogged with retreating trucks, horse-drawn wagons, and panicked infantry. The Finns, moving effortlessly on skis, parallel-tracked the retreating columns, stinging them from the tree-line with sniper fire and light machine guns before vanishing back into the shadows. When the sun set on December 12th, the mathematical inevitability of Finnish defeat had been rewritten. The Soviet 139th Division had been effectively shattered, suffering over 1,000 dead and hundreds captured. The Finns captured vital material that would sustain them for months. 20 tanks, 60 machine guns, and several much-needed artillery pieces. But the cost for Finland was heavy. Pajari's Regiment 16 had been bled white, losing many of its most experienced NCOs and officers in the charges across the ice. The snow on Lake Tolvajärvi was no longer white, it was stained a dark, frozen crimson. In the biting cold, many of the wounded on both sides succumbed to hypothermia before medics could reach them. The victory at Tolvajärvi was the first major Finnish success of the Winter War. It provided a template for what would become known as Finnish mobile warfare, using the forest as a force multiplier to divide, isolate, and then destroy superior enemy forces. For the world watching from afar, Tolvajärvi was a revelation. It proved that the Soviet steamroller was not invincible and that a determined, mobile defense could neutralize the advantages of heavy armor and sheer numbers. Foreign correspondents began to flock to the Finnish front, documenting the White Death that seemed to haunt the Soviet invaders. Colonel Talvela and Lieutenant Colonel Pajari emerged from the woods as national heroes. Pajari, despite suffering a minor heart attack during the height of the winter campaign, refused to be evacuated, continuing to lead his men from the front. He would eventually become one of the only double recipients of the Mannerheim Cross. As the survivors of the 16th Regiment huddled around their own fires that night, eating their own soup this time, they knew the war was far from over. The Soviet Union had endless reserves of men and steel. But for one day on the frozen lakes of the north, the Finns had held the line. They had seized the initiative from the jaws of certain defeat and earned the right to fight another day. The miracle at Tolvajärvi remains a testament to the Finnish spirit of sisu, an extraordinary resilience and courage in the face of impossible odds. The forest was silent once more, but the world now knew that Finland would not go quietly into the night.